Good afternoon. I am Jose Manuel Salas Raya, and I'm going to talk about um, something called class assessment. And this class assessment is related with the first class we had today, when it actually was yesterday. Um, and we are going to cover, or I'm going to cover, some topics. Basically, what is the difference between an approach and a method? And we are going to see some examples of both, the ones that are really are used in language teaching, specifically in English language teaching. So we are going to start right now with the difference between an approach and a method. Basically, in both we have some similarities. Of course, we have some differences, and the meanings or the scope of both of these approach and method overlap. That's why it's kind of confusing sometimes, to refer to these two terms and avoid being confused. Basically, an approach is a way in which you are going to face or to complete or even approach to a project or a task. And you can also see this approach as an angle or a direction, direction to take in order to complete this project or task. And it can also refer to the theoretical framework we have to use in this project. So it is related with all the theory that is necessary, theory or theories that are necessary to complete or to perform the task, or to carry out the project we are about to start. It's important that we need to decide on the approach, and then we decide on the method or methodology. So it's better to start with the approach instead of the method. And of course, a method has some differences. We are going to see them, but basically a method has more like requirements and steps. What is a method? It is a way to do something, or the way something is done. So we have a series of steps in this case. A method is more organized, structured, and systematic, and has also some objectives, okay, that we need to fulfill, and also refers to a detailed description of the tasks or the steps we need to complete to perform the task or to complete the project. Now we are going to focus on four of those methodologies or methods that are used in English teaching. The first one, which is the oldest and also for some people is not very useful, is called grammar translation. Grammar translation was originated, or was, let's say, created in the 19th century, and it's kind of primitive because it doesn't focus on speaking. And this methodology or method, the students have to analyze grammar rules, and they also have to translate information, translate words or texts from their mother tongue into English, or the other way, from English into their mother tongue. So most of this method is related with grammar, vocabulary, and also texts, writing texts, and also translating texts. So it's not very useful for speaking. And the students have to memorize, or are expected to memorize, grammar rules and paradigms and vocabulary, and also emphasizes on accuracy. Okay, so to be accurate with grammar, to be accurate with the words, but not fluency. So fluency is not really taken into consideration, or is not really important. And what the students usually develop is reading and writing, and not speaking or listening. So these two are not really important. What is really important is to have the accuracy of grammar and also the vocabulary. So all these combinations of the words, and also the accuracy of grammar, the structures and everything, but not really the speaking or listening skills. Those are left apart. Then we have the audiolingualism or audiolingual method. This is also called Army method. It was used during the World War II. That's why it's called Army method. And soldiers have to use it to learn how to the soldiers or the enemy communicated. So they used to pay attention to the communications of the enemy, and if it prioritizes or emphasizes the listening, the speaking and listening over reading and writing. Sorry. In this method, it's forbidden to use the mother tongue. So the mother tongue is not used in this language. On this method to teach English, and basically it is used or is learned. The learning is conditioned, so we have a learning through conditioning, because at that time the behaviorism was really famous at that time. So people use this kind of conditioning. They give a praise for something that is done correctly and a punishment for something is done incorrectly, and basically focus on oral pattern drills, that is to repeat, repetition of something that is heard, repetition of the grammar rules, of the vocabulary, and some other stuff once the teacher has already said everything. And we have these drills, of we have certain grammar or a vocabulary patterns or information that required to be practiced, so these people are going to repeat it, and they use the same intonation and pronunciation once they have listened or heard everything. This is more focused, or more this method is more related with repetition, and of course the writing skills are not really important, but the speaking and also listening. Then we have total physical response. This one was created by James Osher in 1960s, and is more related with the actions. Okay, we have a coordination of a speech, what the people say, and also the actions. So when we have a word, we need to follow an action. Okay, we need to perform an action, and in this case the students are going to internalize the meaning of the word. Basically, the students work with verbs. And according to this method, people or students are going to learn like infants, like children or babies. Then they really require a lot of input, so they need information, and then they are going to repeat or do the action. And basically they work with verbs, as I told you before. And according to this method, the physical response or the actions that they perform after the linguistic input is what helps to internalize the language, the meaning of words and everything. For beginners, they use commands, simple verbs like pick up, open, walk, stop, speak. So those are the basic commands that people listen and then they perform or speak or go to the action. Then we have phrases like touch your nose, go to the door, close the door, open the window. So we have phrases, not just verbs but phrases. And then we have more linguistic elements for advanced students. So we use adjectives, we use adverbs, we use what else? Prepositions also. So let's say stand before Anne and Jeffrey. Close the red book. Open the rear door, or something similar. So in this case, we add more linguistic elements, more vocabulary, and some other stuff. Then we have the silent way. The silent way, as the name says, is a method in which the students remain silent for a certain period of time, and then they start speaking when they feel comfortable with the language, when they have learned something. It was invented during the 1960s by this man, Caleb Gategno. As I told you before, they remain silent for a certain period of time, and then they start speaking. It emphasizes, students learning. So this is the first method that emphasizes, or really emphasizes, the student learning, not like the others, which emphasize the teacher's way of teaching, or what is being taught. So in this case, we have the students learning as the main objective in this method. Usually, what they do is to take an active role in their own learning. So they are going to be like the owners of their own learning, and the teacher is going to become a facilitator. It's not the center of the class, because in this case it's going to be the student, and the teacher in this case is a facilitator. And this was like the beginning of this let's say revolutionary way of teaching, in which the student is the center of the class and not the teacher. Then we are going to talk about two approaches. We have the one called communicative language teaching, and we also have task-based teaching. And this was like a response to the other previous methods, which were somewhat rigid. So many experts started to think that the main objective of the key of the language teaching is not to be accurate, or it's not to be let's say it's not necessary to become like a broken record, to repeat and everything, but we needed more something more communicative. So communicative proficiency became like the focus of language teaching, especially for English teaching. And people, or experts, thought that it was necessary to have a flexible teaching, an approach, and not just a rigid methodology to teach language, or in this case English teaching. So we have the communicative language teaching. In this one, we emphasize the engagements of learners in the classroom activities. So they are going to perform different activities or tasks that are going to simulate, or are going to be similar to real life situations. So everything has to be meaningful. Everything has to be related with real life, the world outside the classroom. So it's not just something that is going to be fake, like many other of the previous practices that are not, let's say, contextualized. But in this case, something that is going to be useful in the real world. So we are going to improve communication skills for the use of the outside world. I'm sorry. So this approach focuses on meaning rather than and fluency rather than let's say vocabulary or accuracy, okay, of grammar and pronunciation. So in this case, we take into consideration the errors or the mistakes, but they are not so important. They are at least not to punish the students. They are more related with the learning. So they're important in the way they teach everybody to learn from their own mistakes. So what is really important in this approach is to communicate. Okay, so what they are going to develop is communicative competence. So in many ways, like social competence, communication, many different contexts, used in functions in different ways according to the context and everything, but not just accuracy or grammar rules, which is important, of course, but not the main focus of this approach. And people are going to develop this communicative competence through interaction and authentic material. So we have dialogues, conversations, small groups. We have surveys, we have real life situations, games, and many other activities that are going to help to interact and, of course, to develop the communicative competence and meaning and fluency in many different ways, in different contexts. Now we have the last one, which is called task based teaching. And of course, as the name says, we have a task, and this is based on a task, something that we are going to do or perform in order to learn language functions. And this one is, according to TESOL, is the best way to practice English language teaching, because people are going to focus on a task, and through the completion of this task they are going to learn how to speak, and we are going to, or the students are going to face many different contexts in which these language skills or functions are going to be needed. And in this case, the completion of the task is a structure, so it's not chaotic, it is more structured. We have steps, we have different stages and everything, and these stages are called pre-task, task, and post-task. So in each of them we have different activities that are required for the next step or the next stage. So in pre-task, we need this pre-task to continue with the next stage, which is task. And after the task, which is the main objective of this, all of this structured teaching, we have the post-task, in which they are, or the students are going to reflect, they are going to talk and think about what they have done and the way they use the language. Then students become more empowered, because they are the ones that are going to perform the tasks. Of course, they need the guidance of the teacher, but they are the ones who are going to perform everything. They are the ones who are going to use different language functions and structures and the vocabulary and everything according to the structures and according to the stages in which they are going to work. And they are going to control also the task response of these tasks or activities. The focus, what they focus on, or this method, approach focuses on meaning and form. Okay, but meaning rather than form. Okay, is more related with meaning and not grammar functions or grammar form. And the teacher is able to add more grammar issues, more grammar related topics according to the task or tasks that are related to the lesson for a specific lesson plan. So it's not that we are going to left the grammar aside, but we are going to include it in the task with the vocabulary, with all this contextualization of grammar and vocabulary, and they can add more topics or grammar issues according to the task, but in a contextualized way. So this is everything for today's or for the class assessment. Thank you very much for listening. Bye.